units in the process of going towards resolving those 53 borders, which we know can't happen right now. And the last piece, and then I'll set up, if we can't move into a United States of Africa, and the African Union have the ability to vote this in tomorrow and act on it, we already have an Eastern Bloc region. We already have an ECOWAS in the West. We already have the South that legitimize those three regions as three legitimate African states that comes under the purview of a union of some sort over the three, and dissolve all of the borders within those three contexts. That would be the biggest step towards having a singular nation some way down the line. I'll be long gone before then, but that should be the goal.
Thank you very much, Professor. The amazing words that you mentioned, Professor, sound like a heavenly dream to me. How I wish they were practical, because what you're talking about is right. Unfortunately, some of us that live at the continent in real time are faced with a stark difference between the ideal and the real. I definitely agree with all the ideas here. But one great man, one great writer from Nigeria called Chinua Achebe was asked in the 1980s what Africa's problem was. And he said, Africa's problem are not the rivers or lakes or the mirrors. Africa's problem is leadership. Even our own Yoweri Museveni, he wrote a book called What is Africa's Problem? And he's quoted famously to have said in 1986 that Africa's problem in general, and Uganda, where I come from in particular, are the leaders that overstay power. So we all should agree that it all begins and ends with leadership. Leadership is the difference between these beautiful ideas and the real catastrophe and the real tragedy that we meet. It should not be rocket science for Africans to build trust. We have been through too much not to have trust for one another, but to see. And I give it as an example that a wonderful country like South Africa, which is supposed to be the most landed country, has chosen to be the embodiment of self-hate. Not just the people, I repeat, not just the people, but the leadership too. Where you see the president calling self-hating Africans that are standing against their fellow brothers and sisters just because of their skin color. And we endorse them with a presidential meeting asserting that it is all right for us to carry ourselves in such a way. It is leadership. This belief, or there's an idea, and you've talked about the federating, organizations, East African Community, this ECOWAS and all these. They're beautiful ideas, but I had to mention that these are reduced to only presidential clubs. If we must bring Africa together, it is not the leaders. These federations must not be political, they should be social to begin with, bringing people together, not bringing leaders together. Because leaders use them just to look out for each other's power and to consolidate each other's stay in power. Otherwise, almost 70 years later, why are we still divided by these borderlines? As an artist, I would only reduce this in a little a cappella and say, it was not our choice in 1884. In a Berlin, when them sit up on the table in the scramble and petition for African land, right now we're living by the borderlines. It would be easier if I never had to get a visa to see my little sister in Tunisia or Namibia. But look here, 142 years later, we are still living by the borderlines. And why can't we see its divide and rule? Why do we act like colonial tools? The African unity becoming a reality. We should abolish the borderlines, like Professor said. But that will not come as a miracle. Deliberate steps will have to be taken, and that all goes back to leadership. While our current leaders are throwing around the word Pan-Africanism as a playing card, they don't believe in what they say. Or at least the actions don't represent that, because in the case of Uganda, General Museveni receives up to $1 billion every year in military support and all that from the United States. Why then would he have policies that empower Africans? So it is with leadership. These steps must be taken by the people to assert themselves and hold leaders accountable and ensure that leaders drive Africa into a direction that they want. Other than that, I want to believe that each president wants to keep their own enclave. One that has Kenya will keep their Kenya alone.
You're right. But I want to add a caveat to it, because they're taking the ship on behalf of shared values every day. You understand? But to your point, it is that divide and conquer is based on the colonialism. You understand? And so this is why mass movements are important. So it is through mass movement that things are going to change. It's not there's some individual who could be swayed by $1 billion, in the country and so forth, that we have to look at. So I think that, so trust is based on the kind of relationships that we have.